Good morning, everybody. It is this podcast, this thing that we do here, the coffee break. You're going to have to sit close to that microphone, Levi, and everybody's going to be able to hear your amazing voice.
How's that? Is that good?
No.
No.
You have to sit. There you go. There you go.
I can hear myself really well.
That's perfect.
So it's hard to.
It's coffee break time.
Yep. Got my coffee here.
Cheers. That's weird. So last week on the podcast, I forgot my coffee, which was very devastating the entire episode.
Yeah.
I could barely stay focused, but this morning I'm good. Now, really quick, because this podcast is called Coffee Break, I wanted to give a shout out to two people, Kevin Starr and my wife, Jessica Lingefeld. Kevin brought in, several weeks ago, homemade oat milk. Did you get to taste any of it?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
What a shame.
I was intrigued.
So he squeezed oats, right? Well, last Friday night, we went out to a new little coffee shop in town, and they had the option to have oat milk. And so we had oat milk in our lattes or what have you, and it was really good. So my wife said, hey, I want to make oat milk, or how do I get oat milk? And I was like, I think it's pretty simple. Just Google it, right? So she Googles how to make oat milk, makes two big containers, and this is all because I never really thought about oat milk before. Kevin Starr said, hey, I made oat milk, so...
Right.
We figured out how to make oat milk. We got these two big containers of oat milk. So this morning, I woke up super early. I was getting some work done at the house before I headed out, and there was a big jar of oat milk sitting in the refrigerator. So I went and grabbed it, poured it into the coffee, and it's really good. You should try it.
I'm gonna try it.
It's got a sweet taste to it. If you
so
put,
it's like, is it like almond milk almost, or?
Well, it's like almond milk, except there's no almonds.
Well, yeah, that's
no. It's a really simple thing. You can Google it, but you can basically take raw oats or rolled oats or any type of oats, and you put them in with equal amounts of water or whatever in a blender, blend it up, and then you strain it. Essentially, I think that was the process.
okay.
Anyway, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah,
I was pretty excited, and I've had several cups of oat milk coffee lately. This morning, I'm just drinking a regular Americano.
Yeah, same here.
I've really been fond over the last couple of weeks of Counterculture's roast Fast Forward. For whatever reason, it's not overpowering. It's very chill. It's not too sweet. It's not too bitter.
Yeah, is that why you got the 20-pound bag of it?
Yes, Levi. That's why I got the 20-pound bag. And because we go through coffee like crazy.
Yes.
Right now. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. It's going to be an exciting episode today. I'm glad to have Levi back with us.
Glad to be here.
So I think it's going to be a good episode because about 5 minutes prior to the episode, we were having a conversation while we were making our coffee, and you used the word
mechanistic,
to which I said, oh boy, it's going to go off the rails.
It's going to be great.
Give us a context for mechanistic.
Okay, so yeah, so we were talking about, and maybe not get into the details of it, but so we were talking about the evolution of music, and it's gone from listening to music in either a performance or an audience standpoint to now with the advent of technology and iTunes and headphones and all that. We've moved into we listen to it all the time when we're doing anything, so it's become background sound to us.
Yeah.
So we've removed the community aspect of music, where you're interacting with it and engaging with it as a community. So it's become mechanistic, or it's like a machine that just produces the desired effect without the actual need to engage with it.
This is why I love you, Levi.
Word of the day there.
Yes, exactly. Great context there as well. So anyway, we're not going to be talking about that today. That's a path.
Not enough time.
A couple of things that I did want to remind you about, those of you who are joining us for the first time, or if this has been multiple times for you, I wanted to remind you that you can visit our website, locdoc.net/podcast, and it has a listing of all of the episodes that we've done. This is our 11th episode, and the other 10 previous episodes are all there. You can listen to them or watch them and the context of what the episode is about is there as well. One day we're going to actually have kind of show notes and actually information. We're working on it. We're always improving and adding a couple of things to the podcast every week. So thank you for joining us for that. Also, if you want to get connected with us on any of our other social media platforms, maybe you're running across this podcast on Anchor or iTunes or Google Podcast or something like that, and you're like, hey, who are these guys and what are they about? You can visit our website, locdoc.net/connect, and it has all of our social media outlets to connect with us and be able to kind of see what else we've got going on with our organization. Obviously, this podcast is available on all the podcast networks or podcast applications. You can check us out there. And we record this live on Facebook Live every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And then it's posted there. The video is posted for viewing later on, or you can watch the video version of this audio podcast on our YouTube page, which is LOCDOCINC. So I wanted to throw that out there and let you know that that's where you can connect with us further. And we've had some really great communications just over the last 2 days. I've gotten several comments and connections, direct messages from other companies similar to ours across the country. One guy from Connecticut and one guy from, I can't remember where he was from. That's bad. But another state, and was asking questions about how I think it's Kentucky for whatever reason, but Kentucky and Connecticut, and they were asking about some of the specific things that we're doing to grow our business. They've asked about our opening management software and all that, which is really cool. So it's fun to share these ideas, which is, again, what we're really going to be diving into today with our core values, but some of the things that we're trying to work on here as a business. And one of the things that I really want to focus on, Levi, is and we were talking about this, we want to have some tangible things, something that if you're a listener of this podcast or you're watching this podcast, that you can walk away from it at the end and go, okay, these are some practical applications that I can work on for myself or maybe at work or for my business, things that I can do to engage and improve. Because we have this sign over here beside of us, always improving, and I don't take that lightly. We go through highs and lows in this organization. I go through highs and lows personally. I'm sure you do as well, where things are clicking, everything's working as you expect them to be, and then sometimes they just aren't, and you have to do some real kind of soul searching to figure out what do I need to do to adjust and change, and that's really kind of the root of the always improving process, right? Yes. Is that you never want to be settled, you never want to be content with where you are or what you're doing as far as the processes go, so you want to find ways to be in a better state of improvement. What's working, what's not, and what do I need to adjust? And so it's something that's what we're about as an organization. But we felt like, and I've been talking about it with our team over the past probably 8 or 9 months, is there's a lot of things that we talk about all the time, but I really want to document it. Yeah. And put it down into, these are some core values. These are some filters, essentially, that whenever we need to make a decision as an organization, we can run that decision through these filters. Yeah. Thoughts on that so far, Levi?
Yeah, no, those are really really good ideas, and I've been thinking through. I think human beings in general, we go through cycles. I mean, you just see that in pretty much everything. I mean, you have the seasons. There's winter, fall, spring, summer, and there's the old adage.
There's a song about that, I think.
Oh, really? No. So anyway, but there's the old adage that says, there's a time to plant and a time to tear down, and there's a time for certain things, and I think just it's a natural part of our lives to start to go into phases of building ideas and building new visions and building things, the whys and the whats, and then there's times to take those ideas and figure out how we can actually apply that to our lives. And if we try to stick to ourselves to one of those things, we're going to miss out on a part of it. It's all those cycles we go through are a way that we naturally, as businesses, as people, kind of connect our ideas to actions, and then we have to constantly reevaluate our actions to see if they're matching up with our ideas. And it's just a cycle we go through to help us improve. It's just a part of the improvement process, in the same way the world, you have the winter and fall seasons, then you have the seasons of spring and summer where things grow and it's all necessary for life to continue on.
Yeah.
And it's the same way for humans, I think. So
most definitely. I'm in the middle of listening to an audiobook of Gary Vee's Crushing It right now. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is about documenting kind of your development, documenting your growth. And that's really kind of what we're doing right now today is we're documenting this process. Literally, these core values have been something that we've been talking about for a while here, several months, maybe this whole year of 2018.
Yeah.
But I literally just presented this list in our organization last week, and I said to our team, hey, what I would like to do over the next 7 or 8 weeks is to pitch you these core values, and I want to get feedback, and I want to get engagement, and I want to get understanding as to, do you believe that this is what our core values are? And if not, what do we need to adjust? What do we need to change? And how do we make them better so that everybody in this company believes in it, everybody in this company understands it, and this is the way that if you are a customer of ours or you are a vendor of ours on either side, or even another company that's similar to ours, that it would be a representation of how we operate on a daily basis. And if we're all following that same thought process and that same perspective, then they're going to get that result no matter who they talk to or who they deal with.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the concept with that. So we came up with 7 originally, and right now I think I'm at 8. I added one last week, and we may have to take one away at some point in time because we really said 7 was like the number of completion.
Yeah, it's not good.
But I think that there's a couple that are probably maybe combined or what have you. But our first one, and the topic for today is defined expectations. To jump into this really quick, just a complete side note. Defined expectations for me, and this has been something, a kind of a horse that I've been riding for a long time, is setting expectations and eliminating assumptions. If anybody ever says, I assumed, then clear expectations were not set or somebody was off track. And assumptions really are a bad place for any business to be in, especially service business. So defining expectations. And as a side note of that, this has been something that I personally struggle with a lot, is when you talk about defining expectations, I verbalize a lot of expectations, but it's not documented very clearly.
Right.
And I think as an organization, we're that way. And so this is a first stab at saying, here's our core values, and we're going to define them. We're going to write them down, we're going to document it.
Right.
Let's talk about that a little bit, is when you have verbal communication versus documented communication, is there a difference in it? Does it matter? Should it matter? And how do people...
Yeah, I think there's different angles to look at it. I mean, on the one hand, people have different ways in which they learn more quickly or they retain. So there's people at this very organization, if you were to simply tell them to do something, there's almost a for sure that it's not going to get done unless you were to write it. And not in a negative sense of character flaw on their end, but in a sense of just, if you write something down and send it to them, they'll get it done, you know? And then there's some people, if you were to send them a text, nothing's going to happen, but you give them a phone call and tell them, hey, I need this, it's done before you hang up. So I think a part of that has to do with just how we're differently wired. And so having things available in multiple ways, both documented and verbal, but also the documented side of it, I think, helps you have something, again, tangible. Like, if I tell you something, it's kind of up in the air, but there's nothing specifically. Yeah. Because sometimes I tell someone something and I don't remember even that I told them, like I'll have 500 other things to do that day. And I'm just like, they're like, hey, you remember that thing you told me? I don't know. Yeah. And so writing it down, I think, helps the other person. I mean, there's actually, an aspect of writing it that helps the person writing it to remember better than simply saying it or to, or read it. So
we've talked about it a lot. There's verbal communication, there's written communication, and then there's visual communication.
Yep.
The expressive nature of the communication. Yeah. And I think it's kind of the way that this document was crafted, even such, is the first core value should be defined expectations, and the first actionable on that is to document what our core values are.
Right.
And to exactly your point, documenting something allows you to effectively communicate it.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think of a good example, and the one that comes to my head I don't want to use. But if you have something that's not documented, that you're just free flowing, you're freestyling from, like you just said, unless it's documented in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's somebody's recording video of it, maybe somebody's recording audio. But if it's actually written down or whatever, if it's documented, then you have something to reference other than what you just described. I said something to someone with the best intentionality, but there was no traction with it because there was nothing documenting it in place.
Yeah, and I think
something to point back to, right?
There's also, I think, a commitment aspect to it as well. That I mean, you think about,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, think about like people say, oh, well, I want that in writing, because when you write something, again, it's something you can refer to tangibly. Like you can tell me that I said this or this to you, but that's not going to hold up in court, you know. But if you have something in writing, there's a sense of, when I'm writing this down, I am committing to it. It's before all of you today. You can see it. It's here. And so there's just a greater sense of you know, kind of risk on my end of saying, okay, now you can hold me accountable to these things I've just listed to you.
So, otherwise, it's a he said, she said.
Yeah,
right?
I can say, oh, I expect you guys to set expectations.
Yeah.
But if I have this list of, like, here's the expectations that I have set for you and for me, and then there's kind of this established, again, we're all kind of sitting here watching this thing being written out, and so there's a commitment from all of us to receive it, but also giving the information, and so I think there's just commitment there.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
So documenting it is essentially committing to it.
Yeah.
Versus just the verbal commitment that doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't have any weight, but it's just it's a different level of commitment, the verbal versus the written.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you know, I guess it's one of those things, like, when people are dialoguing, there's more of a conversational aspect to it that people see. It's kind of like experimenting with ideas and going back and forth and getting feedback. Yeah. When you have something written down, you know, if I have a printed sheet of paper, I can't necessarily change the words on there, you know, unless we go back and draft another one.
Sure.
So it's a kind of a sense of, once we've dialogued and experimented with ideas, this printed sheet of paper here, this is our expectations. This is what we've come out with. So it's almost like a finished product type thing. So, so it's one of those things, like, maybe also the different levels of communication have different purposes. One for developing thought, and one for producing out of that developed thought something that we can commit to and have, I mean, expectations for.
Yeah, and then from that, again, communicating what those agreed upon expectations are.
Yep.
So again, ironically, or actually not ironic, it was very intentional, very strategic. Number one on our core value list is defined expectations, and a definition of that, or an explanation of that, has been, don't be frustrated with unmet expectations when you have not clearly set them. Can the customer or teammate execute the expectations without further explanation? And that's really the kind of the question that we're wanting to answer. Yeah. When I communicated to you, like yesterday, whenever we were prepping for this, I said, hey, Levi, I need you to do this, and this. Clearly communicating those things out to you. And then if I could answer the question to myself, can Levi clearly communicate this or execute this without any additional explanation? Yeah. Then that's been set. The expectation's been set. Now it's in your court. You know, you're responsible for carrying it out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And and I think Zach and I were talking about this yesterday, that expectations is an important part of any relationship at all, like business relationships, but like friendship relationships, anything. And I think we are sometimes afraid to set expectations because we feel like we're being too pushy or anything like that. But it's so important to say, hey, this is what I expect from you. We should trust the people in our relationships, especially in business, to say, hey, I trust you, and I need you to do this for me. And we kind of feel like we're being pushy on these people, but it's like, that's how our business is supposed to work, you know. And but if you haven't set that expectation, like you said, you can't. If you don't tell someone you expect them to do something, then you can't expect them to do something.
Correct. Yeah. If you didn't clearly communicate it, then they're never going to meet the expectation that you have unduly set in your own mind, and then then what happens is disappointment. I like where you're going here. Yeah. What you just said was very, very interesting. Expectations is a vital part of relationship. Yeah. Let's hang there for a few minutes, because when it's customer to business type relationship, when it's vendor to business relationship, vendor to customer, and then when it's internal, right? So it's team member to team member. Yeah. You know, the expectations that you set for me and that I set for you and that you set for your other coworkers is huge. Yeah. How do you work through that process, and what has our experience been? Because I think this is the conversation. Is what has our experience been when we have not set clear communications internally, and then the disappointment that ensues because they weren't clearly set.
Yes, and that's huge. And in our company, like, we've seen it time and time again. It's like, hey, why didn't you do this? And then the other person says, well, you didn't tell me you wanted me to do that. And or you didn't tell me you wanted it done in this way. You just said, get it done, and I got it done.
Or you didn't give me a timeline. Yeah, exactly. You just said, I need you to do this.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing is that, like, not only is it the person expecting something mistrusts the other person, but the other person doesn't trust that that expectations are going to be delivered at that point. So they're thinking, okay, well, you're going to want me to do something, but you're not going to tell me what you want, and so now I have to, like, read your mind and figure out what you want. You know, it's like, without the expectations, there's no clearly defined way. Again, going back to the relationship thing, there's no clearly defined way to establish our relationship. Yeah, you can't even improve the relationship because you don't know what's expected on either end. But
you're just fishing and trying different things, and then you get swatted on the nose whenever it doesn't meet the unsaid expectations.
Exactly, and so, but the interesting thing is, once you actually say, "Hey, this is what I expect," and then if it's not done, you can move forward and improve that relationship by saying, "Hey, this is what I expect. This was not done. Why was it not done?" You can go into asking and reflecting. Was it something that I did? Is it something that I did not provide you with the ability to set this expectation, or is it something that you did? How can we move forward with that? Then you can start going through, like, what you can do to help build the relationship up. But without the expectations, you know, just like when you're building a house, if you don't have a blueprint to go off of, you're just going to set random blocks here and there, and your house is going to fall down. Yeah. But you can see where the cracks are in the foundation and here and that if you have a blueprint to go off of.
Something else that I want to, maybe it's backtracking, but maybe it's in the forward direction. Sure. Is it just clicked in my mind when you're talking about that. Written, detailed expectations vary from verbal communication because it can be left to someone's own interpretation. Yes. Right? Yep. And I've heard this in our organization multiple times. Is I asked somebody to do this, I thought I was very clear in it, and it didn't get executed the correct way, or it didn't get executed to my expectation. Yeah. How, and the question comes back is, how did you communicate it? Well, I told them X, Y, and Z. Okay. Are there any variables there? Yeah. Are there any subjective comments or conversations there? Yeah. And when you leave things to subjective nature to their translation or to their interpretation, now you've opened yourself up again for that disappointment. And when it comes to customer service, when it comes to dealing with our customers, we have to think that same way. Yeah. Are we setting those clearly defined expectations of, hey, this is what we can do, this is what we can provide for you, and this is what you will provide to us in this time frame. Yes. You know, it's the transactional type thing, but it's a customer relationship. So you have to set clear expectations in the relationship.
Correct.
Bringing that all around to a big full circle.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and the dialogue aspect is very important as well in saying, hey, I don't think this expectation is realistic. I don't have what I need to do this expectation. I don't think this is a good expectation, or even I think this is great, but this is a way to improve it, or this is something we need to add, so that way we can then continue to mold it to properly represent the relationship, whether customer, business, or between coworkers. But once, as you're working to build that, if you have a reference frame, we've been talking already about not just having ideas floating around in space, but having something tangible to do. Anything you do in life, you have, if you take the time to sit down, even if it's 5 minutes a day, and what do I want to accomplish?
Yeah.
Write a list. Take 5 minutes and
detailing expectations.
And now you have something on paper to look at and say, this is what I want to accomplish. Can I accomplish it? How do I accomplish it? What's step number 1 of accomplishing it? So thinking through it, but any relationship you have at all, if you have that frame of reference of expectations, this is what I expect from myself, from my coworker, from my wife, from business, from the world, and then start interacting with it to see where there are issues, where there are strengths, where there are weaknesses, and that's how you can improve yourself. If you have no reference frame, you have no ability to improve.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a very, very, very valid point. So working from that perspective, first core value for us that we're working off of is defined expectations, some tangible, actionable things that we can all do individually, in our personal lives and in our work lives, in our business worlds. What are some things that we need to define for our expectations? What are some things that every person today can do?
Yeah, so like I said, I think step 1 for expectations is first reflection. Is sit down and ask yourself, what do I want? From this thing, whether it be just me and life in general, whether it be my relationship, whether it be whatever. What do I want? So start writing. Just start writing it, and don't get too detailed. Just start high up. Because then I think the next step would be, how do I accomplish that? Can I take that up here and bring it down to here? Like, what's the first thing I can do? Sometimes you want to, as a person, you want to have $10,000 in the bank. Well, that's not something you just accomplished, in the next 5 minutes.
Sure.
I mean, not always.
You gotta have a plan.
Yeah. So it's like, what's step 1? Well, step 1 is
spend less than you make.
Yeah. Well, step 1 is get $10 in the bank. And so find, and the thing is, if you find easily accomplishable steps to get to that bigger goal, you actually have this sense of accomplishment in you that keeps you moving forward. It's the same thing for, say, in our workplace. If I tell Zach, hey, I expect you to do this when I ask you to do this, and then he does it, then we've both have this accomplishment of that. I've asked him to do something and it was done, and he's been asked to do something and he did it. So we both have trust for each other. We have a sense of accomplishment. Things are working the way it should. There's order, and that allows us to continue to build off of that and make a better business.
So with that, it really, again, you hit on another really good point. Core values. What is the reason that a company or that an individual would have core values?
Right.
Like, why go through the exercise? The reason that I believe that our organization should have core values and detailed core values and documented core values is because I believe in, I've talked about it before, in empowering people to make quality decisions.
Yeah.
So I think, in my perspective, that you can either decide to allow people to make their own decisions. You can empower people to make their own decisions. And then you can go back in and judge them for the way that they made them incorrectly. Or you can set clear guidelines as to how decisions can be made and then allow them to go do that at free will.
Yeah.
Core values, in my opinion, is the way that anybody can go through And again, like I've talked about before, flow chart or a filter that you can say, here's the problem, here's the issue. I need to get a resolution. So how can I process that issue through to get a resolution? And I either, my options are to make my own decision and then suffer the consequences if I make it incorrectly, or 2, just haphazardly make one, 3, go and ask somebody to make it for me because I don't want to be responsible for making the wrong decision. Or the other option, I think, and maybe it's not the only other option, but the other option is to have a set of values that you can make those decisions by. If they meet up with all of these things, if you can logically answer those questions against that, then you've made your decision and you move forward, and you don't have to worry about the suffering repercussions from that because the decision has been made based off of previously set, clearly defined expectation.
So that's very interesting, and I think when you kind of think through the extremes on either end of it, you kind of see the benefit of that, because you've got the two extremes of, on the one hand, having no expectations at all, and when you have no expectations at all, you have no reference to do anything. And so when you tell someone that you want them to do something and you have no expectations for making those decisions, they probably don't have any confidence at all in themselves. They don't have any confidence in you. And so they go out and they probably do a bad job, and they don't know what a good job looks like. They don't know what a good decision looks like, so they have nothing to go off of.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, the other extreme is if all you have is just a set of rules, and the rules have no reasoning behind them. It's just, hey, do this. Yeah. Make sure you make this much money. Make sure you're, checking this and doing that, and don't do a bad job. And then the person has nothing to base it off of. And I think we are identity driven people. Mm-hmm. So we have to connect who we are to what we do. And I think that's a huge problem today, is that a lot of our thinking has no identity tied into our actions. Yeah. So it's like, don't just tell people what to do, but these core values are establishing who we are as a company and saying what we are doing is going to reflect. So if you make this decision based on who we are, mm-hmm. We set expectations. We're honest. We're kind. We're all these things. Not mm-hmm. to spoil any of the future values that we're going to do, but if you're tying it to who we are, that's the thing. Is we are human beings. Our lives are built on making choices, and choices are built on understanding who we are inside. And so when we can connect those two, it gives us the power to say, hey, this is who I am, and I'm going to make these decisions. I'm not just going to say, hey, I want to make sure I do the right thing so that Chad's happy and I can get a paycheck. But it's more, this is who I am, and so this is the decision that I would make being that person. And that gives empowerment, like you said. Empowerment is freedom to make choices.
Yeah. No, you hit on several good points there, and I think a lot of them you said very well. One of the things I did want to expound upon is that I think that a good set of core values is an agreed upon culture environment for the entire organization that you, Levi, agree on, and I, Chad, agree on, that we can move forward. Yep. It's not about at that point making me happy. It's not about fear of is my boss or is my manager going to get mad at me about something. It's not about that. It's about am I operating in the values that we have agreed upon as an organization. Right. My job as one of the leaders here is to help to craft those values and to say, hey, these are some things and these are ways that we can implement them. Yeah. Not to strike fear into people to say you're not abiding by them, but to draw attention when they're not, So it's I really want to make sure that that's very clear that this is not something that's set out to say to make somebody happy. It's to give you the freedom to work within the values that have been set so that you can be empowered to make those decisions as you go. One of the questions, and you should see it on there, that we got on our Facebook Live comments is from Brian. He said, should leaders set expectations for themselves and communicate them to their employees? Can and should employees hold their leaders accountable to the expectations that they have communicated? My opinion on that, I think it's a very valid question. My opinion on that is that those expectations should fall in line with the same things as the core values.
Yeah.
If I can't abide by the core values that the company has, then I shouldn't be in a leadership position.
Yes.
So all leaders should, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to be focused on, and I hopefully we'll nail that down very before too long. Is that these core values? These are some brainstorming ideas that I've been having for a long time, but I am not saying that this is the final draft. This is my proposal to this organization. I'm looking for feedback to say, no, these are not adequate. These are not right. No, these are not doable. We need to scratch these and make some that are. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm proposing it. I'm pitching it to our team, but it's not the ultimate end draft. And so it's up to me as a leader, it's up to Chris as a leader and other leaders in our organization to abide by the same core values. Yeah. So we all hold ourselves to the same level of expectations.
Yeah, and very interesting kind of answer to that question would be that a lot of that depends on what values your company holds. There's a lot of companies out there that one of their main values is power, is that the leaders are kind of basing everything they do on the fact that they have power and they want to tell their employees what to do and when to do it and where to go. But if a part of your company's value is to develop and empower your employees, then being accountable to them is a huge aspect to it. And there's a risk involved in that. But you'll find, as with any relationship, when both parties are giving of themselves for the common goal, especially an employer for his employees, that you'll find a much more beneficial relationship there than simply a master-slave kind of relationship where you just do what I say and then I give you money.
Yeah, I mean, the book that we've been having our book club for the past 12 months on Turn the Ship Around is refers to it as the leader-follower mentality versus a leader-leader mentality. Right. And that's really kind of the heart of what we're trying to accomplish here. And this is a focus of that, is to allow you to lead freely. Then you have to have the parameters. You know, I don't want a do this, do that, do this, do that type thing. It's these are the values. These are the ways that we operate. Yeah. Go out and execute accordingly in your free will, as long as it aligns with these values. Right. Making those decisions. I think this has been an amazing conversation, in my opinion. I appreciate all of your input, Levi, as we've had this conversation. We are well past our allotted time frame, so I do want to wrap the thing up. But I'm really excited about future conversations. I'm excited about pitching this and sharing this with our team over the next several weeks, because I want it to be something consistent that we're talking about. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm really excited about. I want to do 30 seconds to say where this kind of came from. Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership, and there's a program that they have called All Access. I'm a part of that group, and I'm a part of what they call a masterminds group, which is about 6 to 10 businesses every month that get together, and they basically hold each other accountable. And this is one of the things that I said I wanted our company to accomplish, is to get core values out. And every week or every month it comes up. Where are you at with it? How are you progressing through it? And it's helped to hold me accountable, because, to Brian's point, nobody else knew that I was working on this. I've mentioned it a couple of times randomly in some of our meetings, but there was nobody else to hold me accountable within this organization to get it done. Yeah. I see the value in the long run. It's something that's going to take us a while to get traction with, but this masterminds group that's a part of the Entree Leadership All Access is what has held me accountable to getting it done. And it's very interesting. It's a game changer. So if it's something that you're looking at for business, find a group of people that can hold you accountable. I mean, they didn't beat me over the head. This is a video conference that we do every month, but I had to come in and report where I was at on my progression. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of talk about, that's where a lot of that foundational stuff came from, and now to see it kind of come into fruition is pretty exciting. Yeah. That's all the time we have for today, and we have definitely used up more than our time. Next week, we're going to pick up on core value number 2 for us, which is consistent communication. And so we'll be talking about that next week and unwrapping that a little more. Until then, again, a couple of reminders. You can connect with us at locdoc.net/podcast or locdoc.net/connect. Those are two places that you can find all of our information. And the video of this conversation is up on Facebook and YouTube. And we love to connect with you, engage, answer any questions. If you have any comments about the subject today, or you have some questions or disagreements, we'd love to understand that perspective, because this is something that we want to make better, and it's something that we want to execute well with. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week here on Coffee Break.